Give me the... Oh. This. Come on, Michael, just give me a little cotton. I don't need a package. I just need some cotton. Oh, no, wait, the wipes. Give me the cotton wipes. Oh, this is disgusting. It's all over. It's sticky, and we're gonna need some kind of cleaning fluid to get it off.
How about aftershave?
Oh, come on, Michael. Just get me one of the diapers. All right, good. No, these tape things go in the front or the back.
How am I supposed to know?
Okay. There.
Whoa! These diapers are way too big. What size did you get?
They're ultra absorbent. The more absorbent, the better, if you ask me. Will you hold it for a minute? The kid's going crazy.
I don't want him.
Come on, Michael.
Hey, don't pull that so hard. It's gonna rip.
I'm not gonna rip it.
Yes, you are.
All right, well, okay. Get me another diaper. I'll use the tape. I'll use the tape from the diaper. I'll tape it up. I'm an architect, for Christ's sakes. I build 50-story skyscrapers. I assemble cities of the future. I can certainly put together a goddamn diaper. Take it easy, kid. All right? There, see? It's working. Piece of cake. There. Yeah.
Nice job, Pete.
The little insect was just waiting for that diaper to fall off.
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Sounds like a job. Verbal diorama. She watches all the movies, from comedy to drama. From the top rolls sound, and don't forget the action. She'll watch until the end, and then she'll give you her reaction. Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and outtake. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories, all the categories.
Hi everyone, I'm Em and welcome to Verbal Diorama episode 345, Three Men and a Baby. This is a podcast that's all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't, that doesn't have kids, but knows those nappies are far too big for that baby. Welcome to Verbal Diorama, whether you're a brand new listener, whether you're a regular returning listener, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this podcast. I'm so happy to have you here for the history and legacy of Three Men and a Baby. And as always, if you are a regular returning listener, thank you so much for continuing to listen and support this podcast over the last 7 years and now 345 episodes. That's quite a nice number, 345. Thank you for your support. It genuinely means so much. And if you are a brand new listener, welcome to this podcast. Hopefully you will become a regular returning listener. And as I said, there's lots of episodes there for you to pick and choose from. This month on the podcast has been very different, but also super fun as well. I've done 2 double episodes, something completely different, where I picked 2 similar movies that had the same concept and did a versus between them. And both of them have had really good receptions. So I will definitely go back to more twin movies in the near future because people seem to really love the idea of pitching 2 movies against each other, and obviously the history and legacy of each and how the history and legacy of each kind of intertwine with each other. So I did Dante's Peak and Volcano and Deep Impact and Armageddon. And yeah, I've had some really lovely comments about both of those episodes. So thank you so much. Deep Impact and Armageddon did extremely well, like the best that a debut's ever had on this podcast. So people clearly love Armageddon, and maybe they also love Deep Impact as well. And then I did an episode on Ever After, which is my personal favourite Cinderella story. So very different month, and finishing out the month with something again very different, a very 80s comedy about parenthood and fatherhood, and how men just simply can't look after children without it causing general comedic hijinks. In April, I did an episode on Short Circuit, a movie that has simultaneously aged poorly and actually well in the depiction of Number 5, who I still think is a marvellous creation. And in that movie was Steve Guttenberg. And remembering how much of a force he was in the 80s, I immediately bumped Three Men and a Baby up the schedule because it's always kind of been there hovering. But I really wanted to do more Steve Guttenberg because this is the movie I remember him from the most, other than Police Academy, which will come to this podcast at some point too. And it was just a movie that I watched a lot as a kid, but I never really watched as an adult. And so obviously I rewatched it for this podcast. And, minus the whole drug smuggling thing, it's actually a really fun, sweet movie. So let's jump into it. Here's the trailer for Three Men and a Baby.
Touchstone Pictures presents Tom Selleck, Steve Guttenberg, Ted Danson.
Jack,
Angela, boy, you look different. What happened?
I'm dressed.
That's it.
Three incredibly eligible men hoping to meet some incredibly perfect women.
So many women in so little time.
Now, at last, they're about to find that one girl who will sweep them off their feet.
That's a baby.
It's a baby.
Of course it's a baby.
It's your baby.
No, it's not my baby. It's Jack's baby. The child doesn't look anything like me. I have more hair.
Well, I want to see the way you three big guys handle this one.
I had to go to 3 different places, buy 4 different kinds of formula, 2 different kinds of diapers, bottles, towels, nipples.
You do realize she did a doodle.
Doodle.
Yes, doodle.
You haven't been able to work or to sleep. And there's been all over this place for days.
I build 50-story skyscrapers. I assemble cities of the future. I can certainly put together a diaper.
Will somebody please tell me what the hell is going on around here?
Figure it out for yourself.
Are they always this strange?
Yes.
Since they got involved with another woman.
Touchstone Pictures presents 3 normally intelligent men and 1 little girl.
So, what do you want to do?
They're about to discover the only thing worse than raising her
Oh, no, please, not on the silk sheets.
is losing her.
We should be her family.
And let me tell you, the first time you get a word daddy, I don't care who you are. Your heart just melts. Can you drive a little faster, please?
Touchstone Pictures presents a comedy about 3 dedicated bachelors and the one woman in the world they couldn't live without.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night.
3 men and a baby.
I think she did a doodle. Your turn to change her.
I'll give you $1,000 if you'll do it.
Peter, an architect, Jack, an actor, and Michael, a cartoonist, live lives of eternal bachelors in a Manhattan penthouse designed by Peter. After Peter's birthday party, Jack leaves to film a movie in Turkey. Before he flies out, he calls his roommates and tells them that a friend of his needs a small package held at the penthouse for a few days until his associates come to pick it up. When a baby girl, Mary, is left on the doorstep, Peter and Michael mistaken her to be the mystery package, and with the baby is a note saying she is Jack's daughter. Peter and Michael have no idea how to look after a baby, and when their landlady delivers a small box, the actual package, which contains drugs, it gets tossed aside. At first, they struggle to care for Mary, but soon get the hang of childcare, including nappy changes, baths, and feedings. 4 days later, 2 drug dealers arrive at the apartment for the package. Peter and Michael mistakenly give them Mary before realising what they actually came for. Let's run through the cast. We have Tom Selleck as Peter Mitchell, Steve Guttenberg as Michael Kellum, Ted Danson as Jack Holden, Margaret Collin as Rebecca, Celeste Holm as Mrs. Holden, Nancy Travis as Sylvia Bennington, Philip Bosco as Sergeant Melkowitz, Paul Guilfoyle as Vince, Cynthia Harris as Mrs. Hathaway, and Michelle and Lisa Blair as Mary. Three Men and a Baby has a screenplay by Jim Cruikshank and James Orr, was directed by Leonard Nimoy and was based on Trois Hommes et un Coffin by Colleen Serrault. It's a tale as old as time. 3 bachelors have their lives upended when a baby girl is left on their doorstep, and though initially clueless, they grow attached to her over time. Their names were Jacques, Pierre and Michel, the baby was Marie, and it all happened in Paris in 1985. That movie was different. That was 3 Men and a Cradle, or in French, Trois Hommes et un Coffin, Directed by Colleen Serrault, it was a huge hit in its native France, winning 3 César Awards in 1986 and receiving an Academy Award nomination for Best Foreign Language Film. An American remake was all but guaranteed. But like many movies I talk about on this podcast, it needed something different, a certain je ne sais quoi, you might say, the lightning in a bottle. And the story starts at Disney in the early 1980s, when Disney was in serious trouble. The studio had spent years asking itself what Walt would have done, and the answer wasn't working. Disney started the decade reeling from decisions that had been made to cut costs, and its animation division was struggling. The 1970s and early 1980s have been called Disney's dark ages for a reason. It was a period of creative failures and financial setbacks in which repeated efforts to reach family audiences faltered. Live-action family films starring the likes of Don Knotts and Jodie Foster were keeping the lights on, but Disney as a brand was hobbled. The rise of Steven Spielberg and George Lucas as the new masters of cinematic imagination didn't help either. The animation division's crisis came to a head in 1985. The Black Cauldron had been in development for over a decade and ended up costing $25 million, the most expensive animated feature ever made at that point, double the budget of its predecessor, The Fox and the Hound. It took in only $21 million domestically. The studio's animation unit was gutted. Animators were relocated to a rundown building in a sketchy neighbourhood, and the division looked like it was facing the end of feature animation entirely. That is covered in more detail in episode 241 on The Black Cauldron, so I would highly recommend, if you are interested in that period in Disney animation, please listen to that episode. The creation of the more adult-orientated Touchstone Pictures in the early 80s helped save the studio financially, even as the animation department struggled. Under then CEO Ron Miller, Touchstone Pictures was founded on the 15th of February 1984 as a label specifically for PG-rated and more mature content. Its first film was Splash, which grossed $68 million domestically in the summer of 1984. Michael Eisner joined Disney as CEO in September 1984, having previously served as president of Paramount Pictures. He immediately brought in Jeffrey Katzenberg to operate under the Touchstone and Hollywood Pictures banners. Katzenberg focused the studio on adult-orientated comedies through Touchstone. In 1986, Down and Out in Beverly Hills became Disney's first ever R-rated film. The following year, Adventures in Babysitting became their first PG-13. Michael Eisner had seen Trois Hommes et un Coffin while in France and thought it would be the perfect movie to remake for an American family audience. He set about acquiring the rights to remake the film from Flash Films in the summer of 1986. The sale stipulated that Flash Films would be a co-producer on the American version, going in 50-50 with Touchstone, as well as Colleen Serrault reprising her role to direct the American remake. And the idea for this was pretty simple: make it cheap and make as much money from it as possible. With Colleen Serrault already attached as a director, the hunt went on for stars who were known to the public, but cheap. While the likes of Chevy Chase, Steve Martin, Bill Murray, Jack Nicholson and Arnold Schwarzenegger were all considered for the role of Peter, it went to Tom Selleck, and at the time Selleck was one of television's most famous leading men, coming off of Magnum P.I., which ran from 1980 to 1988. A long list of names were considered for Jack: Jeff Daniels, Danny Glover, John Hurd, Kevin Kline, Gary Oldman, Bill Pullman and Dennis Quaid among them. Ted Danson was cast fresh off his fame as Sam Malone on Cheers, which gave the movie a second major TV heartthrob alongside Tom Selleck. Selleck and Danson were seen as outliers because in those days, TV stars were TV stars and very few successfully crossed over into movie stars. Steve Guttenberg was different. He was riding high in the movies at the time. He'd recently starred in Cocoon, multiple Police Academy films and Short Circuit, making him one of the busiest comedy stars of the mid-80s, and he was the one who was seen to have the most potential star power. But even he was struggling with his career, finding himself in more Police Academy movies than he probably wanted to be associated with, and struggling to find focus in his career up to that point. Rounding out the cast would be big screen newcomer Nancy Travis, not British but American, putting on an accent, as well as Academy Award winner Celeste Holm as Jack's mother. Shortly before filming was due to begin, Colleen Serrault left the remake for health reasons, although a later report indicated that she was fired after repeatedly clashing with the screenwriters and studio executives, and so then the search was on for a director to replace her. But as I mentioned, Michael Eisner had come over from Paramount, and during his tenure as studio chief, he had overseen the Star Trek movie sequels. And after the success of Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan, another previous episode of this podcast, that's episode 266, Leonard Nimoy was excited to return as Spock. In fact, he was so excited, he wanted to direct Star Trek III. Michael Eisner was reluctant to hire Nimoy, but Nimoy persuaded him, and Star Trek III The Search for Spock became his directorial debut. Critics praised his direction on the movie, and it would lead to Nimoy returning to direct Star Trek IV The Voyage Home. Leonard Nimoy was an unlikely but effective choice to direct Three Men and a Baby. He'd already proven himself commercially with Star Trek III and IV, and Nimoy was trusted by both Eisner and Katzenberg to deliver cheap and quick. Star Trek IV was also deliberately comedic in tone, and it had been a massive commercial and critical success. It was essentially Nimoy's audition reel for a comedy without anyone realising it at the time. Leonard Nimoy came on board as a director just 5 weeks before shooting began. By the time he arrived, all 3 actors were already cast, the set was already under construction, and a search for the babies was already underway. With the principal cast already hired, Nimoy was the new kid on the block, and he arrived to some scepticism. However, he fully understood what he was there to do, and during the 2-week rehearsal period before filming, he encouraged the 3 leads, then bachelors Tom Selleck and Steve Guttenberg, and the long-married Ted Danson, to go out on the town in Toronto where they were filming to connect as a threesome. They visited clubs, bars and restaurants to help them connect with each other and the feeling of bachelorhood they needed to project on screen. And it worked because the 3 men genuinely became good friends. Nimoy reviewed videotape footage of around 200 sets of twin girls for the role of Mary, before narrowing the search down to 4 sets of twins, which were then brought in to be seen in person before the final choice was made. The reason twins were used was practical, because child labour laws strictly limit how long an infant can be on set, so casting twins effectively doubled the available filming time. Identical twins Lisa and Michelle Blair were just 4 months old when they were cast, and their mother, Jerry Ann, described the whole thing as a bit of a fluke. She'd been on maternity leave, heard about the casting call, and thought it would just be a fun day out in Toronto with her daughters, believing it was just for a single scene in a movie. Fortunately, Lisa and Michelle were naturals. They say never work with children or animals, but despite Nimoy's fears that the babies wouldn't perform when they were supposed to, he found both were consummate professionals and always hit their cues. They became enamoured by the boom mics on set. They would follow it with their eyes rather than looking at the cast. So Nimoy and his crew had to start hiding and disguising the microphone to keep their eye lines where they needed them. And when one of the babies pees on Tom Selleck in the movie, that was apparently Lisa, but Michelle also did pee on him on a separate occasion. Lisa is the twin featured in the iconic film's poster, which was photographed by Annie Leibovitz. The wet spot visible on Tom Selleck's shirt in that shot, that was also Lisa's doing. Neither twin pursued acting beyond the film, and baby Mary would be recast for the sequel. 3 Men and a Baby remains Michelle's only screen credit, while Lisa made one further appearance in a 1999 thriller. Both left the industry entirely. Lisa went into customer service and Michelle into insurance. Principal photography ran from April to June 1987, with interiors shot in Toronto and exteriors in New York City. And Toronto is the main reason the movie's most famous behind-the-scenes story simply can't be true, because there is an urban legend associated with 3 Men and a Baby. And in August 1990, shortly before the release of 3 Men and a Little Lady, a rumour began circulating that a black silhouette resembling a rifle alongside a human figure can be spotted in a background window during the scene between Jack and his mother. The urban legend claimed the figure was the ghost of a boy who had once lived in the house used for filming, and most versions of the rumour claim the boy died by shooting himself with a rifle, after which his grieving parents abandoned the house. In reality, it was a cardboard standee of Ted Danson's character Jack, dressed in a tuxedo and top hat, that had been left on the set, and it was filmed on a soundstage in Toronto, not in a house. The prop was created for a subplot in which Jack appears in a dog food commercial, but this was cut from the final version of the film. So sadly, no, there is no ghost visible in Three Men and a Baby, and there never has been. Three Men and a Baby marked a tonal difference between it and the movie it was a remake of. The movies appear to exist in almost polar opposite worlds, one where people are enamoured with babies and one where they're treated as an annoyance. In the French film, the men never verbally express the depth of their pain. Their attachment to Marie is conveyed through attitude, glances and behaviour rather than dialogue, reflecting the French masculine ideal of impenetrable strength. The American version takes the opposite approach. The men are openly demonstrative, proudly taking Mary out in public. The original plot remains mostly intact in the remake, with one significant exception. The American drug dealers are caught and the men help the police bring them in, whereas in the French film the dealers get away. The men in the American version develop a rapport with the police inspectors, with one officer even wanting to hold Mary, which is a warmth entirely absent from the French film, where the police are more aggressive and the men are under much tighter surveillance. And the endings are different as well. The American version closes with all four adults, Peter, Michael, Jack and Sylvia, living together happily with baby Mary as an unconventional family unit in their penthouse apartment. The French version opts for something closer to shared custody, which is a much less Hollywood ending. Serrault and Nimoy treated the material differently. Nimoy's remake externalises everything. It's broader comedy, brightly lit and with a tidier resolution. They reveal fundamentally different assumptions about what an audience wants from a film and the differences between French and American comedy. Three Men and a Baby is less of a translation and more of a cultural reinterpretation. After Leonard Nimoy's passing in 2015, Steve Guttenberg reflected on his experiences working with him to The Hollywood Reporter. He said of Nimoy, quote, "The first time I met Leonard Nimoy was in 1986 when I was 28 and he was about to direct Three Men and a Baby. He had this impressive home in Bel Air on Stone Canyon that was filled with art. He showed me a model of the set and spoke about how these three characters were going to form one complete man who'd raised the little girl. He and his wife Susan cooked dinner. When we got to talking, he told me about doing the TV series Highway Patrol with Broderick Crawford in the 1950s and how you'd show up on the set, change clothes behind a trailer, and the director would tell you to stand here, say this, get out of the way. Leonard was the opposite of that. He's the guy who wants to make you great. When we were making Three Men, his plan was to make us a family. He was always encouraging us to go to dinner together. He was manipulating the experience with a heart. He wasn't a Machiavellian manipulator. He was a Mother Teresa manipulator. I felt he was especially protective of me. Once we were walking outside the hotel and there were fans who wanted to take pictures, which we did. As he walked away, he said, 'The camera takes your soul. Be careful of that.' I think he meant it as a metaphor for the business, but he was really serious. I was like, okay, I won't let the camera take my soul." Unquote. And now a word from our sponsors, which is you, if you'd like to be. Thank you for listening to this podcast. It's completely independent, made by me, and relies on listener support. If you're enjoying this episode and the work that I do, and you want to support an indie podcaster, if you have some spare change, you can financially contribute to the upkeep of this podcast. You're under no obligation. This podcast is free and always will be, but there are a couple of ways you can help if you wish to and if you have the means to. You can make a one-off donation at verbaldiorama.com/tips, or you can subscribe to the Patreon to support the show monthly at verbaldiorama.com/Patreon. All money made goes back into this podcast by paying for software subscriptions, website hosting, and new equipment. Huge thank you for your continued support. Now let's learn some more about this movie and how Keanu Reeves is somehow connected to it. And this is the ideal time to segue into the obligatory Keanu reference of this episode. And if you're new here and you don't know what that is, it's where I try and link every episode with Keanu Reeves in some way because he is the best of men. And this one was particularly difficult, but I found a way around it because this is a movie about a baby. So I thought, well, how about I go to a baby website? So I went to a baby website, and according to nameberry.com, the name Keanu is a boy's name of Hawaiian origin, meaning the coolness or the cool breeze. It's currently, as of 2025 ratings, the 649th most popular name for baby boys in the US, peaking at 2020 at 514th in the US for baby boys. So there are a lot of baby boys or young boys or teen boys or grown adult boys that are called Keanu, which makes a lot of sense, I suspect, because it is a cool name and you would only ever be associated with Keanu Reeves if you were a baby called Keanu. Moving on to the music, this is a very 80s movie with a very 80s soundtrack. There's a lot of saxophone on this soundtrack. It includes songs like The Minute I Saw You, the theme from Three Men and a Baby, performed by John Parr, and the Miami Sound Machine with their songs Bad Boy and Conga, which, for those who are interested, is Gloria Estefan. Tom Selleck, Steve Guttenberg and Ted Danson contribute to the soundtrack for their rendition of Goodnight Sweetheart Goodnight, and the score was composed by Marvin Hamlish. Three Men and a Baby released on the 25th of November 1987 and was an instant smash hit, hitting number one at the domestic US box office and staying there for 2 weeks before dropping to second for 2 weeks, then back to number one for 3 weeks before dropping back to second for 3 weeks. The movie would stay in the US top 10 for 18 weeks. On its $11 million budget, Three Men and a Baby would gross $167.8 million domestically and $72.2 million internationally for a total worldwide gross of $240 million. It would end up becoming the biggest American box office hit of 1987, surpassing Fatal Attraction and Beverly Hills Cop 2. It was the first production from Disney to gross over $100 million domestically in its initial run, and its highest grossing film at the time until surpassed in 1990 by Pretty Woman. Three Men and a Baby has a 67% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and the site's critical consensus reads, like the French farce it's based on, Three Men and a Baby is too self-satisfied with scatological humour to qualify as a bundle of joy, but the role of makeshift daddy brings out the best in Tom Selleck. And of course, with it making an incredible amount of money at the box office and getting positive critical reviews, a sequel was all but inevitable. Three Men and a Little Lady from 1990 also features Tom Selleck, Steve Guttenberg and Ted Danson, but with Robin Weissman as 5-year-old Mary, as Sylvia gets engaged to an Englishman and the three men follow Sylvia and Mary to England to stop the wedding. In 2010, Selleck said Disney had spoken to him about a potential third film, tentatively titled Three Men and a Bride. He later mentioned in 2013 that the third film seemed to be real and then it disappeared. A remake was announced in 2020 for Disney+, with Zac Efron in the cast, but the film seems yet to be made. Baby Mary, supposing she was born in late 1986-ish, would be coming up on her 40th birthday, and the 40 years since Three Men and a Baby have signalled the rise of the modern father, as well as the strength of the independent working mother. But work-life balance is still a delicate juggling act. By the mid-1980s, attitudes towards fatherhood were actively shifting. More women were entering the workforce. The radical feminism of the 1970s was entering mainstream discourse, which challenged the assumption that mothers had an exclusive duty to raise children. Plus, a recession earlier in the decade had forced jobless fathers to spend more time at home. The women's movement, somewhat ironically, helped birth what some sociologists called the daddying movement, because working mothers were busier outside the home and less available within it, so fathers had to fill that role, and the cultural shift created a broader society more hospitable to changing gender roles and stereotypes. But the dramatic shift in fathers' roles that had been forecast in the 70s and early 80s hadn't fully materialised by the time Three Men and a Baby was made, and most fathers still fell somewhere between the newly idealised nurturing father and the absent deadbeat dad. Three Men and a Baby imagines men who are capable of nurturing, but treats their doing so as inherently comedic. Research from this period shows that despite greater father involvement, men still played a secondary role in family life and gravitated towards play rather than physiological care, especially with infants. The new father was emerging but hadn't yet displaced the men are the breadwinner paradigm. But this is a movie that works based on the strength of its performances, especially Tom Selleck, because his performance as Peter works because cooing over a baby is so at odds with what audience expected from the type of broad-shouldered macho male pin-up that Tom Selleck represented in the age of Reaganite conservatism. The film needs its heroes to be incompetent at first, because the jokes only land if competent fathering is still a surprise. To its credit, the film avoids the obvious trap of suggesting women are automatically capable caregivers while men are constitutionally incompetent. Sylvia, Mary's mother, is the most revealing character in this sense, and she's also the most poorly served character in this sense. She abandons her baby on a doorstep because she can't manage career and motherhood simultaneously. And rather than the film treating this as a crisis worth exploring or talking about, she's just a plot mechanism to get the baby to the doorstep. Mary is the product of a casual fling that her father doesn't even remember. Her mother's abandonment of the baby is basically framed as the inciting incident that allows the men's stories and the men's emotional journey to begin, rather than a situation worthy of its own empathy. Through a more contemporary lens, what Sylvia experiences can be seen as a recognisable portrait of postnatal overwhelm. She is a woman alone, without a partner or support network. She is British, living in the States, she has no family around, and she simply cannot cope with work and childcare, which is something that many parents can empathise with and experience. The movie doesn't name or examine any sort of postnatal overwhelm or postnatal depression, but instead it uses her crisis as a comedic springboard and then tidies it away in the third act when she returns, and ultimately they then become this unconventional family unit. But Three Men and a Baby is genuinely progressive about fatherhood. It helped normalise the idea of men as primary caregivers at a pivotal cultural moment, while also simultaneously being quite negative about motherhood. It's a film that expanded what masculinity could look like on screen. It helped to reshape Americans' views of male caregivers, so it's not surprising that Hollywood began greenlighting other family-friendly comedies featuring men taking care of kids. Look Who's Talking followed in 1989, starring Kirstie Alley as a single mother and John Travolta as a taxi driver who befriends her and winds up babysitting for her son. And in 1993, Mrs. Doubtfire starred Robin Williams as a father masquerading as a British nanny in order to see his kids. Men were finally allowed to show care, empathy and compassion to children on screen, and it wasn't seen as emasculating in any way. But mostly, Three Men and a Baby changed the game for Disney. At a time when the studio desperately needed to make money, Jeffrey Katzenberg was responsible for reviving a studio, and under his management, the animation department eventually produced Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin and The Lion King. Katzenberg also sealed the Pixar deal that produced Toy Story. The Touchstone live-action revenue was the engine financing all of that. Katzenberg focused the studio on adult-orientated comedies, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, Three Men and a Baby, and Good Morning Vietnam, and their success led to the animation renaissance that followed. So while we may not think we have Tom Selleck, Steve Guttenberg and Ted Danson to thank for much, except Magnum P.I., Richard from Friends, Police Academy, saving people from LA fires, it's true, Guttenberg is a real-life hero, Cheers, and The Good Place, which, let's be honest, I don't think any of us are in the good place right now. We actually have this movie contributing to saving Disney at a time when they needed saving. So, where's Three Men and a Bride, Disney? The actors want it, we want it. Do it as a Disney Plus original because 40-year-old Mary deserves her happily ever after. Thank you for listening. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on Three Men and a Baby, and thank you for your continued support of this podcast. For the next episode, Kaijun returns. Now, if you don't know what Kaijun is, it's kaiju movies in the month of June, and it's something that I've done a couple of times over a couple of years, looking at some wonderful monster movies during the month of June. And it returns with the biggest shark movie in the world. Not Jaws, because Bruce has appeared on this podcast before, several times actually, because I've done episodes on Jaws, and then I did an episode on Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and Jaws the Revenge as well. So they are all episodes that already exist. So it's not Jaws. No. It's not a great white shark. It's a megalodon. Jason Statham returns to Verbal Diorama in The Meg, the first movie of literally the biggest kaiju that's ever existed. After a short break, please join me next episode for the history and legacy of The Meg, and that'll be in your podcast feeds in about mid-June-ish sort of time. Thank you for listening to Verbal Diorama, a totally free and independent podcast that relies on listener support. If you want to show your support in multiple different ways, you could leave a rating or review wherever you found this podcast. You could tell your friends and family about this podcast, or you could find me and follow me on social media and you can share the podcast that way. I am at Verbal Diorama across social media, where you can share posts, like posts, comment on posts. It all helps really to get the word out there, to hopefully get other people to know this podcast and know the recent episodes that I've put out. I genuinely love doing this podcast, and anything you could do to help would be so appreciated. A huge thank you to the incredibly generous patrons of this podcast. I could not do what I do without their support. To Simon, Laurel, Derek, Kat, Andy, Mike, Luke, Michael, Scott, Brendan, Ian, Lisa, Sam, Jack, Dave, Stuart, Nicholas, Zoe, Kev, Danny, Stu, Brett, Zenos, Sean, Rhino, Philip, Adam, Elaine, Aaron and Steve. Please consider joining them and supporting this podcast on Patreon if you have the means to. If you want to get in touch, you can email verbaldiorama@gmail.com. You can also go to verbaldiorama.com and you can fill out the contact form. You could say hello, you can give feedback, or you can give suggestions as well. I would genuinely love to hear from you. You can also DM me on social media as well, if that's an option available to you. I love to hear from people and I always try to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks again for listening and thanks for supporting independent podcasting. It means more to us than you know. And finally...
Do-do-de-o-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-de-o-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-do-do. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Baby, I just can't treat you right. Well, I hate to leave you, baby. I don't mean maybe, because I love you so. Bo-do-de-o-do-de-o-do-de-o-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-do-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-do-do. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night.
Bye.